What's going on, everybody? Welcome back, and thank y'all for tuning in to the Lucky Underdogs podcast. Another episode, another one. We keeping them coming, baby. It's your boy, Devin Butler. I'm joined always by my right-hand man.
CJ Prosise here, man, and we got the great legendary Brady Quinn.
You were the first Notre Dame player that I really knew their name. Like, you were the first one for me personally. You know, I can't speak for anybody else, but I know for me, that 10, I was like, oh, snap. I said, okay, they got somebody back there doing something. Okay. So, yeah, man, it's a pleasure and an honor to have you on here, bro.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Obviously, felt blessed, obviously, to be able to go to Notre Dame, and it's a great platform. So hopefully, we'll talk a little bit about the Irish and so far how they're doing this year.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, first things first, man. You know, this is the Lucky Underdogs podcast, and I mean, I do have to kind of explain the name.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
obviously,
I'm curious about how do you guys put the name together?
So, like the underdog, so you might not really know the underdog, kind of the stories of the underdog in Notre Dame, because you kind of, and you might have been an industry player. You're probably an industry player. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So the underdogs, you know, those are special teams guys. Those are guys who, you know, don't really get a lot of opportunities. They really got to just kind of, they might get one opportunity here on special teams. They might mess up. They might get one opportunity, defense, offense, mess up. And then they just kind of in the doghouse. So those are underdogs. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So we try to highlight the guys who, you know, don't really get that, aren't like at the front of the media and all that stuff. So that's kind of where we got the name from, the Lucky Underdogs. You know, while we were at Notre Dame, we had a group of guys called the Underdogs, and we were just, you know, the guys who just got it out the mud almost. And so that's kind of where we got the name from. And so, you know, it's an honor having you on, man. Like Devin said, you know, growing up, you know, especially high school for me, your name was Brady Quinn was the guy, you know, Notre Dame. You're one of the big reasons I chose Notre Dame, because, you know, you brought so much notoriety to the school. And I can't say how much I appreciate that. So,
well, I
pleasure having you on,
saying
man.
that, man. I like the name. I like the name. So you like guys, a little chip on their shoulder, guys.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Like you got a lot of all right.
Oh
all
yeah,
right.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
yes, sir, man. So, just to get things started off, we last week we had another Notre Dame great quarterback on here. We had Joe Theismann, man. And that's a hell of a dude right there. He's got great energy.
Absolutely.
And we talked to him a little bit about the portal, and he gave us some comments on what he thought about the portal. And now that we got Sam Hartman, he says he's a believer in the portal.
he wasn't before, though, was he?
Nah, he wasn't bought in before. Before. So based on that, I just want to ask you your opinions on the portal, and if you think the quarterback position is a specific cog in that wheel of the transfer portal.
Yeah, I think the transfer portal, it's fascinating. And it's fascinating to look at how different teams are utilizing it in various ways. You know, take Notre Dame, for example. You mentioned Sam Hartman. We kind of supplemented, you know, how we were using the transfer portal in Notre Dame with bringing in guys like, you know, Jean-Baptiste from Ohio State, Thomas Harper, a guy from Oklahoma State in the secondary. Obviously, Hartman we brought in as well, Devin Ford in the backfield. It's kind of a supplement to, hey, we got some guys who transferred out. We got some guys who, you know, maybe we feel like still need some development. We need a guy who can come in and play and help us win right now. That's one philosophy. The other philosophy is you look at Colorado and look at what Deion's doing right now. And you go, holy cow, dude. Like, you can turn this thing over in 1 year's time and you can be competitive. You can be a team that not many teams have played, you know, 2 Power 5 teams out the gate, one in which was playing a national championship last year on the road. And be able to beat them like they have. And now a lot of that has to do with Shedeur Sanders at quarterback, and Travis Hunter's a hell of a player, but you got to have a QB, right? You got to have someone to get that guy the ball. So, like, I look at it and I think the transfer portal has created more parity in college football. There's no doubt about it, because it's taken programs that if they couldn't get a guy out of high school or that kid comes in, needs more development, they can go find a kid who's at another bigger program who might even be higher rated that can sling it around and is ready to play right now. He doesn't want to sit and wait behind whatever first-round pick, second-round pick he's sitting behind.
Yeah.
So I think if you look at the numbers, 60% or so of the starting quarterbacks in Power 5 are transfer quarterbacks. It's crazy when you look at it that way, but it's played a huge impact, I think, on leveling the playing field, giving teams more opportunities with giving more quarterbacks more opportunities throughout the country. So, as far as whether you're a fan of it or not, it is what it is. Like, I don't have any control over whether or not the transfer portal exists. If I was to make one change, it would be this. And other sports have this. Other sports have one window. Football has two. And you have a 45-day window starting in December and in January, and then you have one that comes up in May. I would try to make it where you just have one window. And the reason being is it is a long-term thing. And like, now that I'm like a dad, I can like say this kind of stuff, but like, you got to make kids want to commit for at least a year.
Yeah.
I mean, technically you could make a kid, especially if he's graduated, like they can transfer as much as they want. They could come in December, January, play through the spring, and then May be like, I'm not feeling it. I'm out. And I understand, like, we want to give players opportunities because we say, hey, a coach can bounce and leave at any point in time. But that's why you have that window there at the end of the season, or you create a waiver where you say, look, all these kids now, because their coach got caught up in something, they have the opportunity to, when it's time, they can transfer, they can apply, and they can go transfer somewhere else. Well, they can go play for a coach they want to play for. So I think that's a simple fix, simple solution, and I'd like to see it implemented because I think it calms down a lot of the tampering that's really going on with different college rosters. And hopefully these young men realize you got to get your degree. You got to have some sort of foundation, some sort of networking and background once football is over with that you want to have one day. Like, everyone thinks you're going to play on this Hall of Fame career and retire. Dude, if you're a Hall of Fame caliber player, you're wired like the type of guy who wants to go out there and wants to be able to dominate in the next thing. Like, you're not going to want to sit on your butt and go play golf someday. Trust me. Like, I remember when I got done, I was doing some broadcasts, but playing a lot of golf. I'm like, man, I need more. I can't do this every day. This isn't enough.
Okay, yeah, no, I dig that.
I love that insight, man. I definitely love that insight. Especially, it's just kind of a wild, wild west right now. And that definitely, that two windows is, especially that spring one, because after that spring ball time, guys are just gone. Yeah. I think I know Joe was talking about the other week that teams aren't even putting out a depth chart because they're scared guys are going to transfer during the springtime. Mm-hmm. So like that's a crazy thing going on.
I never remember the day of seeing "or" on a depth chart, and now you'll see that just says "or," and they just put it alphabetical order. So then they're like, no, no one's the starter. Everyone's just going to play, and we got all of them. There's just an alphabetical order. That way the parents don't get upset and the player doesn't get upset.
It is a different world, man.
Yeah.
So for going forward, man, do you think Notre Dame is going to the portal for quarterbacks, or do you see guys that we that's coming up that we would be able to develop, I guess?
Well, first off, you got to look at the guys we got there, right?
Yeah.
Steve Angeli, young man who really developed a lot over the course of, I think, the spring and into the fall camp. And I feel like they feel really good about where he's at, not only as a backup, but probably his future. And then Kenny Minchie comes in with a lot of notoriety. I think he's a young man who's going to have a shot to compete for it when it's all said and done. Then, after that, CJ Carr, who's the grandson of Lloyd Carr, really, really highly talented kid out of high school up in Saline, Michigan. Look, I'll be honest with you. When I first saw his tape and what he was doing, I was like, man, the kid's light years ahead of where I ever was. And I had the opportunity to play every game and start as a true freshman. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens after this year. Obviously, Sam doesn't have any more eligibility when you play 6 years college football. It's like, time to move on. The only guy I've heard of having 7 years is Chris Ottman-Bell, the wide receiver up in Minnesota. And I'm thinking to myself, holy cow, I hope he's getting like his PhD or
a lot of school.
For sure. That's a whole lot of class.
I barely got through
study hall hours.
I was going to say, dude, that's like Van Wilder. Like he's like the old guy coming back to party. Like, this dude's still here? Sure. Yeah.
As the guy who did a fifth year.
Yeah, exactly.
The guy who did a fifth year, I can tell you, when that fifth year, you feel old in that locker room, man. Those freshmen come around and you're like 22, about to be 23 or 24. You're like, oh, man.
I remember being in training camp like in year 8, and that was obviously the end of the road of it for me. But just walking around the locker room, seeing how guys interact with one another, wasn't any of that. Like, everyone's got their head buried in their phone.
Yeah.
And when I was in college, like, we had the Nextel chirps,
say, smoke, where you at?
And it's like, people weren't on their phone that much because usually you're trying to like figure out where they were to meet up with them in person. We really didn't have social media. I think the first version of Facebook was the Facebook, and we were all like man, I don't want my parents to know where I'm at when I'm
Right.
in college. So, and like camera phones just came out my senior year, so it was hard because like you get in the locker rooms, guys are always busting on each other, playing different card games or dice or whatever else. And then it's like as you got older, you're like, man, this is different. Like these guys can't really relate as much. So I'm sure Sam probably feels that way a little bit as a 6-year quarterback there. But
Got to.
I think he's done such a good job that you're always going to be evaluating your roster. You're always going to be looking and seeing like what's out there. What do we need? How can we stay at such a high level? And that's where Notre Dame's at. I think they're truly in competition for a national championship this year. Sam Hartman has a lot to do with that. But as does, I think, the way they've recruited and how they've developed a lot of these players. I mean, I named 4 guys through the transfer portal. I also should name our kicker because he's got a hell of a leg, Spencer Schrader at USF. But that's 5 guys, right? Like you look at that and you say, that's probably about what you're looking at annually, 3 to 5 guys. And then the rest you want to be able to bring in from high school, develop, and eventually take over. So as far as like, will we keep going to the transfer portal? I don't know. Maybe if you feel like you don't have enough depth or you got some guys who get beat out and then they say, man, I want to go somewhere else. I think I'm too good not to play. That's I think at the quarterback spot, that's going to happen everywhere, every year. Yeah. Hopefully enough of the guys that come to Notre Dame understand the importance of the degree. And also the fact that like, you don't have to start for multiple years to be a first round draft pick.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You can start for a year.
1 year, you're good.
So
I mean, look at Shedeur Sanders. I mean, what he's doing. He can go this year and he'd be with this thing be number 3 quarterback right now. So
yeah. And by the way,
after 2 games, like
I'll say this, like that's not surprising what he's been doing. And
right.
You're like, this kid can sling.
He was dicing them up.
He is fired. You knew what he was going to do once he got to Colorado. Like it was he knew what was going to happen. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Coach Prime over there in Colorado and what they got going on. I'm tuned in almost every week, man. I'm tuned in.
Well, I say tune into Fox Day because we're following around pretty much. We're back there this week. We'll probably see it in a couple weeks when they play SC. So we're basically Team Big Noon's team Boulder at this point.
No doubt. Speaking of Big Noon, speaking of your broadcast mates over at Fox. How is it being on set with Matt Leinart? How is that? Do you guys still in competition a little bit during breaks or what?
No. I mean, I think there are those competitive, days that are behind us that will still bring up and razz each other, or even just our pride for each of our schools. But now it's like your teammates, and you're trying to figure out how you can make the best broadcast possible. How you can continue to keep building the Big Noon brand. And largely as quarterbacks, you always feel kind of tasked with taking a leadership role and doing that. So, this year we've got Mark Ingram coming and joining us. He's done a fantastic job so far. And he's an awesome personality, great dude. So, I always feel tasked with like Matt and I saying, hey, how can we get the most out of Mark? How can we get the most out of Coach, when we're up there talking about things? And so, we're at just different points in our lives. We're both raising kids and talking about the difficulties of parenting and just the different stuff that goes on. And a lot of the conversation, honestly, now is like about anything other than the football stuff. We try to save that for on air. So maybe it's like we're naturally a little like, oh, crap, he just said that. Like, that's how you feel? Like it makes for better TV that way. Yeah. And so it's a lot of like dad stuff. It's a lot of like, marriage stuff or, other stuff that's going on outside of what we're actually doing, talking about football.
Yeah, the dad stuff is a lot, man. Dad stuff is great.
I'm not a dad yet. CJ is a dad, so y'all can bond over that. I'm still free at night. I ain't gonna lie.
Yes, you want to stay free while you can.
How many do you have, CJ? You just got one?
I got one. He's a 2-year-old.
Okay, there you go. You're right in the thick of it then. And here's the thing. Like the worst thing someone said to me was like terrible twos, and they go, yeah. And I was like, well, no one told me that begins in like 18 months. Like you don't get to 2 when you don't get to pad.
Yeah, it starts 18. It's like mine was like 16 months. I don't know.
There you go.
Yeah.
And here's the last thing I'll say to you is I think 3 is harder than 2 with kids.
That's what I heard too.
Yeah,
that's what I've heard as well.
They're preparing you at like 2, but like now you're in a grind and a battle, and then once they get to 4, then it turns into awesome. Now, we're fortunate. I've got 4 now. Our 3-year-old now acts kind of like a 4-year-old. She's a little more mature and just independent. So she's like an absolute joy, but she definitely has her moments. But dude,
Yeah.
good luck. I
Oh
know
yeah.
I know our fatherhood journey is.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yes, indeed.
All right.
What you got for him, CJ?
Back to the Irish. How about Ohio State coming up? I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
we got Central Michigan. We all know we need to get through that game. We're not looking past it, but we are looking past it. Okay. So Ohio
Right.
State, the team, what do we got to do to, beat that team? They're looking pretty solid so far. Really, so talented team. What do we got to do?
Yeah, so I think offensively, if you go back to last year's game, kind of a different circumstance. Both teams were playing in week one. Buckner was a new starter on the road. And, we were up at half. I think we were up like 10-7, which shocked a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
and I think, if you would have asked them like, hey, like, would you have taken it? Hell yeah. All things considered at halftime. Now the game didn't finish how we wanted.
Right.
And so I think it's going to take obviously all four quarters when you got two good teams like this, two physical teams. We're going to have to be the more physical team.
Absolutely.
Sam's going to have to make some plays, obviously big plays downfield with his arm, which we've already seen. That's like one of his specialties. That's really where he excels, but also with his legs. Like this is a team that they'll be able to match up with our wide receivers. There's not going to be guys open. In order to get them open, we might have to, give them a little more time or utilize your legs and be a part of that rushing attack with Audric Estime and the rest of the group behind him. So that's part of it. I think defensively, you got to eliminate Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah.
And in doing that, the hard thing is you've got other guys you have to worry about, right? Emeka Buka is really good. He could be a first-round pick.
Really good.
He could be a first-round pick. Carnell Tate. A lot of these young cats are coming on. They are as talented as it gets. So you got to be able to hold up, eliminate the big plays. And I think you got to find a way of making Kyle McCord uncomfortable. He's now been announced as their starter for the rest of the season by Ryan Day. He's looking a little shaky. I mean, he looked better versus Youngstown State, but I mean, that's Youngstown State.
Right.
So I think you got to find a way of getting pressure, probably with four, not having to sacrifice too many in coverage, because those tackles too are new, remember? And so hopefully that's a more favorable matchup, at least on the edges, and finding a way to get more pressure on McCord. So we've got to be the more physical team at the line of scrimmage everywhere. Got to be able to find a way of making some big plays, in particular Hartman utilizing his legs too, but big throws downfield. And then I think you got to be able to eliminate Marvin Harrison Jr. If you do that and you get some pressure on McCord, those four things, I think you're going to feel really good about the result in the end.
Yeah, and I think that Marvin Harrison Jr. You got to get him, got to eliminate him first and foremost because he's the guy.
I got faith in my boy Ben.
Yeah.
We can put him on there, put 20 on him.
Yeah, Ben's good, man.
That's one of those that, like, when you talk to, we go to these games, and a lot of times we have the games. We don't this week, but normally we do. You'll go down, you'll see some scouts and some people and you'll say, hey, who are you looking at? And that's a game you'll see a lot of scouts at because they want to see just that. They want to see how Marvin Harrison goes up against Ben Morrison. And I think everyone knows what their grade is on Marvin Harrison, but it's more about Ben. Like, hey, this is a great opportunity for you. You're not draft eligible this year, but come that next year when you are, they're going to look back at this performance. And they're going to say, look how well he played as a true sophomore against one of the best wide receiver prospects we've seen in a while.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I'm a huge fan of Ben. His older brother, Sammy, played at Arizona, and he also was my backup in high school. So I remember Ben Morrison running around being the water boy during some of my Saturday games in high school. Seeing him now, it's amazing. It's a beautiful thing to see, man.
Isn't it funny, like when you see young kids, whether they're the ball boy or the water boy, and they're around it young, it's like they already kind of get a sense for it. And I think there's something about serving guys, and who are in that position, and seeing guys in that position when you're young, what to aspire to. And I think when you get to that point, when you're there, it's nothing new for you. You're kind of like, well, I expected this, right? Like I was helping these dudes get water. Now, I'm helping the next generation. Or I'm helping the next kid who's helping me get water. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, they're a great family too. That Morrison family is awesome. His dad played in the NFL. He played corner. Played corner at the Redskins for a few years. Yeah. Shout out to Daryl Morrison, man. I had to throw that in there for him. Yeah, that's my guy, man. Yes, sir.
Yeah, man. All right. I think we're going to wrap it up. Our last question here. Let's see. Hartman wearing number 10. That 10 is a, big legacy at Notre Dame. How you feel about that? Is he going to support it? Is he going to wear it the right way?
Yeah, he has, man. He really has. I mean, he was 10 before he got to Notre Dame. So I think the number means something special to him. Mm-hmm. I was 10 before I got to Notre Dame. It meant something special, at least at my high school back then. to a lot of our quarterbacks. That was kind of the number that got passed down through the years. And, that was kind of like a tradition back at Dublin Coffin where I grew up. So when I got to Notre Dame, one of the things in my recruiting story that was kind of unique was when we walked through the stadium back then, in the locker, they'd have a list of all the All-Americans that had worn that number before you got there, whatever your number was in high school. Mine didn't have anything on it. And it just said, make your own legend, or create your own, legend. And I was like, wow. I was like, that was almost like a challenge that was like, all right, that's pretty cool. Like no one's done it here before with that number. So why not now? I mean, obviously you contemplate like the number 3, number 5, number 7, for some of the greats that have come before you. But for me, it was 10. And on top of that, my grandma, I obviously went to go play for Ty Willingham. My grandma, when Coach Willingham came to our house to eat, she was like berating Coach. She's like, hey, you got to make sure he gets that number 10. That's the number he wants. You got to make sure my grandson gets that number 10. So shout out to Grandma Peg out there for making sure T really hooked me up with that number 10. But
we had to make sure that.
I mean, look, the ultimate compliment is when guys wear it and people remember back on you fondly. That's the coolest thing. So obviously, I'm rooting for Sam. Excited he's here. I feel like with what we've created with the collective and all that, hopefully it was helpful and helped encourage him to want to make that decision to go to Notre Dame. So excited to see where the rest of the season goes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, man. Well, Brady, man, we definitely appreciate you for tuning in with us. It was a pleasure and an honor having you on here with us, man. Thank you for your insight. It was awesome, man, for sure.
I have one question for you guys. Am I considered a lucky underdog now? Like, do I get to slide into that category?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And man, we can make you an honorary member. Honorary member. We can make you honorary. We gotta consult the council before we make any decisions.
You get back. Maybe we can come back on before the USC game or something. You get back and what the council says.
We got you. We appreciate you coming though. We really appreciate you, dog.